Hey friends, so I've spent a lot of my life arguing with people. Like that's the thing I've done with my life. I've spent a lot of time arguing with people, and I enjoyed a lot of it. Some of it was totally hair pulling, insane, like frustrating and overwhelming, and well, was it overwhelming? It was all consuming, right? It's a slight difference. It's not so much that you get overwhelmed by the argument, because the argument is small. The argument is just some annoying thing around you, but you can get into it and really kind of let it eat you. And I've argued with myself about the utility of arguments and whether or not it's worth doing, and I experimented with let's not argue with anybody for some time, and that was a good experiment to run. I highly recommend that if you are an argumentative person, set like go a month refusing to argue with anyone about anything. I don't think you will necessarily arrive at this kind of zen, uh, enlightened state where you decide that, oh, I'm never going to argue with anyone ever again. But that time that you spend deliberately experimenting with non-argument will teach you something about the way you tend to argue. And I guess you could also say this about like silence. Like people go on silent retreats. It's not because they want to never speak again, but because when you choose not to speak, you then get to for a while you'll be thinking a lot, and then after a while what I've heard from people is that even their thoughts start to go silent, and there is something that you experience beyond that comes back with you. You then use language, you use speech differently, you use it more skillfully, you use it more thoughtfully, right? Like it's no longer a reflex. So I guess what I'm trying to talk about here is the argumentative reflex, the reflex response that I have to argue with someone. That is not something that is necessarily helpful, and that is something that can be unlearned, and I recommend unlearning it. And I'm saying this from 20 years of experience of a lot of arguments with people, with friends, with enemies, with strangers, with internet, on various platforms, online, in person, everything. It's just and there's a bunch of technical stuff to get into about the nature of argument and language and framing and perspectives, and how when two people have a disagreement, right? What happens usually is that they've each had different life experiences, and they've then come to develop different worldviews based on those life experiences, and then when they see an event or they see something happen, whatever, they then have different interpretations of that event, and like what they think, how they perceive it, what they think should be a consequence of it, and so they have different ideas about what that event means, and how people should respond to it, and then they have a clash because they have different perspectives. And it's tempting to try and argue about why your perspective is important, and you're trying to argue that your perspective takes precedence over the other person's perspective, but the other person is thinking the same thing, right? I've been reflecting on how when you play poker, you think that you have a good hand, but like statistically, your opponents are equally likely to have hands just as good as yours. Sometimes they will have better hands than you, sometimes you will have better hands than them. And what really matters in a game of poker is not what you think you have, but what you think the other person has, right? And similarly, in arguments, what really matters is not your point of view, but the other person's point of view. What do they think? I mean, if you want to win a fight, if you want to intimidate someone into silence, or you want to just, kind of just clash with them and come out of the clash victorious or superior in some way, sure. But like, I've done that before. I grew up doing that as a teenager in my early 20s and stuff. And it's not, I didn't find it fulfilling. I don't think it's very fulfilling. And so what I recommend is ask questions, try and understand where the other person is coming from. And if you don't want to, if you think you understand where they're coming from and you don't want to have that conversation because you think that conversation is going to upset you, fine, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't have that conversation. Walk away if you can. Right? And sometimes people will say things that are consequential to your life. right? So there's like the intellectual parlor game. Oh hi, there's the intellectual parlor games of what you do for fun, and then there's things about like that affect your life very directly. So for me, it might be like talking about racism, for example, right? It's not just a game for fun for me. Like it will impact how people treat my nephews and niece, and me. I also matter, right? But where am I going with this? Even so, even when you're talking about things like racism, bigotry, uh, you have to strategize. You have to pick your battles. You have to think about the outcome that you want, and you have to ask yourself about how each individual argument is helping you get towards the outcome that you want. And a lot of people don't think this far ahead, and I understand why they don't, because they're tired, overwhelmed, frustrated. But if you possess intelligence, if you possess peace, like I was gonna say peace of mind. It's relevant, but not peace of mind. More of like what of mind, nobility of mind, maybe. It's a certain quality. Some people have it, some people don't have it so much. You can develop it. It's the capacity to be, I want to say great, but I don't know if that's the right frame either. The capacity to change things, the capacity to change yourself, to change others, to lead. I don't know, I'm figuring this out as I'm talking about it, but like there exists a way of being that is transformative, right? And transformative for yourself, transformative, if you really do it well, you can lead millions of people, right? Like Gandhi did, Martin Luther King Jr. did, Mandela did. Like, and to be fair, most people don't want to be those people, right? Most people just want to live their lives, and they get frustrated by something and they want to fight about it. Understandable. I don't judge you if you don't want to think so big, but I'm trying to find people who think big. I'm trying to find people who really want to make a big difference at scale. And but even then, you have to be careful with the kind of people that you recruit for that sort of thing, because it can't be from a place of neediness. If you're needy about it, and if you're like angry and hateful about it, it'll leak. People will tell. They can sense your anxiety, and it won't work out. So I'm not making the grand gestures that I could be making, because I still don't feel entirely ready. I'm kind of working my way up to it. I'm kind of doing the internal work, right? I need to resolve my own, and you'll never perfectly resolve all your anxieties, but I need to resolve my own shit. And part of that is learning how to interface with disagreement in a way that isn't threatened. So I don't want to feel threatened by someone who disagrees with me, and I want to be able to smile and be like, oh, that's interesting, why do you think that, where are you coming from, help me see your point of view, so that I can carry as many points of view with me as possible, represent them as well as I can. And I believe that when you do that well, good things will happen. And we'll see. I'm gonna do it. I have been doing it, and I'm gonna keep doing it. And I believe that through trial and error, I've figured out a way of being that's very effective, like very, very potent, powerful, rousing, inspiring, abundant. And maybe I'm wrong. If you think I'm wrong, I would like to hear what your criticisms are, so that I can integrate them. You see how this works? Yeah, done.